Hello, everybody, and welcome to the afternoon. We had a blockbuster morning session with cultural events that were beyond art and imagination. We had Bhavan introduce us with inspirational notes from Sanaya for what the youth empowerment should be about. And now we are ready to start our first program session, Zarathustra's Guide and the Art of Living. That's right. Today, we embark on a journey into the heart of Zarathustra's teachings through the Gathas. Before we dive in, we thank the Zoroastrian Association of Greater New York for providing each family with a copy of Disha J. Irani's Understanding the Gathas. These books are the late Farmers Patel, former Zagni and Farzin president, and dear friend of Keki Dadachanji. And this section is generously sponsored by Iraj and Bobby's Songdala. So give them a round of applause. And now to the session, which will unfold in 3 parts. 4 dynamic young speakers will share their insights and personal connections to the Gathas, showing how these sacred hymns guide their lives. Second, our lead speaker, Dr. Keki Dadachanji, will offer a special presentation on how Zarathustra's wisdom can enrich our daily lives. And finally, we open the floor for reflections, questions, and a deeper collective exploration of the Gathas. So let me introduce our inspiring panelists. Natasha Dungor, raise your hand, Natasha. A future leader in healthcare and business analytics, brings global perspectives shaped by her advocacy work, including representing the Zoroastrian community at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Mahtab Dastur, a freshman at Rice University, is passionate about youth empowerment, environmental relationships, stewardship, and cross-cultural dialogue, earning recognition and platforms, and helping others connect deeply with Zoroastrian values. Farzin Avari, an educator and community leader, fosters kindness and compassion in young leaders. As Assistant Secretary of Khazana and former co-chair Zaima, she is committed to empowering youth and creating inclusive spaces across North America. And our lead speaker, Dr. Keki Dadachanji, is a distinguished academic, retired corporate leader, currently a respected faculty member at the Osher Life Learning Institute at Rutgers University. As the leader of Zagni's Gathas study group, Dr. Dadachanji exemplifies the integration of ancient wisdom in contemporary life. So let us now begin this journey of discovery and reflection together. I didn't mention Afshan. Sorry, did I miss out Afshan? Oh, sorry. Afshan Irani. A biomedical engineer and product manager, has been a mentor and leader, helping others connect deeply with Zoroastrian values. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Auntie, for the wonderful introduction. So to start off the session, I just want to go over the basics of the Gathas, what they are, and a base rule of what they do. So unlike the prayers from the Lord Devasa, many of us don't often engage directly with the Gathas. When we do, it's often in translation and rarely in their retelling. This limits our understanding of their deeper meanings. The Gathas are believed to be the only teachings directly attributed to Zarathushtra and offer timeless guidance on living with integrity, purpose, and balance. They explore themes like truth, righteousness, and harmony. At the core of these teachings are universals such as honesty, trust, and mutual respect, which are vital in daily life. The Gathas aren't just religious texts. They offer a philosophy for living a moral and fulfilling life. Written centuries ago, Zarathustra's teachings still hold relevance in today's world. The Gathas, also known as the Songs of Zarathustra, guide us in leading a stable, prosperous life. There are 5 Gathas: Onaman, Vishtavan, Spentaman, Mokshatra, and Vaishnavish, each offering unique lessons. The concept of freedom of choice, central to Zarathustra's teachings, is not as modern as many people believe it to be. Keki will be diving into further, so I won't go too deep right now, but in the Onaman Gatha, we learn that it's our responsibility to use our judgment and make the right choices. In the Vishtavati Gatha, 43.1, Zarathustra says, happiness to him who gives happiness to others. This reminds us that making others happy also brings happiness to ourselves, enriching our consciousness and sense of purpose. Our 3 core tenets, Kamala, Hota, and Vivrashta, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, are well known across our community. These values come from the Spentaman Gatha, where Zarathustra says in Ha 47.2, through the holiest mentality spent on making, the best life will be for the one who speaks good thoughts and performs actions inspired by Aramasa. By embracing these principles, we align ourselves with integrity and righteousness. In the Mokshattra Gatha, Ha 51.2, Zarathustra expresses gratitude to Aramasa for fulfilling his wish and offers advice to couples entering marriage. He stresses on the importance of understanding, love, and good thoughts, words, and deeds, values that extend beyond marriage into all relationships in life. Each of the 5 Gathas offer valuable insights, contributing equally to a well-rounded and balanced life. Although they were written centuries ago, their lessons are as relevant today as ever. These teachings shape our character, guide how we interact with others, and navigate the world. Values like honesty, selflessness, trust, and open communication begin with an individual, but spread throughout the community. The Gathas offer a practical and timeless philosophy, providing a moral compass rather than blind adherence to rules. They inspire us on the path towards prosperity, the ideal world. Thank you.
Natasha. So you heard from her about what the Gathas are and what they fundamentally represent. My connection to the Gathas comes from the time of Mahtab prayers in August. And it's important to note that generally during the Mahtab prayers that you and I may attend, the Gathas themselves are not actually being prayed. It's different offerings and offering Gathas that are being prayed. And theoretically, we're praying the Gathas ourselves, right? So my biggest exposure to them comes from the explanations that our Sunday school teachers gave to us and the Dastur gave to us after those Mahtab prayers. And a big thing that I learned about the Gathas is how they reflected our spiritual journey. So I'm going to try and take you through my Gatha's journey and simultaneously explain what the Gathas say about our soul's journey. So we start with the first Gatha, Onava. And so when I'm praying the Gathas, it's always while the Mahtab prayers are going on. And on the first day of the Gathas, I'm usually fighting sleep because the Onava Gatha is the longest Gatha. And so I'm dozing off and I'm trying to read this Gujarati text. And the room that we're It was so cold for some reason, I don't know why. And then, after all of the prayers, our lead, Dastur, takes us to a Hammandagi, and then at this point, all I want is food, right? I can smell the pour-over, the omelets in the kitchen, and the same and the pastries. But I'm sitting and I'm listening and trying just a little, at least a little, to just learn what he's trying to tell me. And so on the first day, I'm understanding what it's going to take to get through the end of the 5 days. And so in the case of our soul, the Onubad Gatha sets up for what we need to reach Freshwakanadi, or Freshwagar, the ultimate destination of our soul. And then we move to the second Gatha, Ushtavad, and now I'm understanding what it's going to take, but also, thank goodness, because the Ushtavad Gatha is so much shorter compared to the Onubad Gatha. I've also managed to turn up the AC slightly in our prayer room so it's slightly warmer. And this Gatha is filled with the promise and hope that I'm going to make it through the end of the Gathas. And so I will survive waking up at 4 a.m. every day. And during the Ushtavad Gatha, I've just barely managed to finish the Gatha at the same time that the Dasturjis finish their prayers. And so I'm super happy that I finished. I have a sense of personal satisfaction and some happiness for Ushta is being reached. And for our soul, the Ushtavad Gatha tells us that implementing the teachings of our religions will bring us Ushta, or happiness. And then we move on to the third day, spend the money. Now usually during the other Mukta prayers that aren't the Gatha prayers, I'm praying the Niyashis, the days, and the general, the usual prayers. And then during the first two Gatha days, I'm just barely managing to finish the actual Gatha itself. Now on the third day, the Spendama Gatha is so much shorter, and I'm getting to the point where I finish the Gatha before they finish their prayers, right? So I'm motivated by my success from yesterday. Oh, and yesterday it was very good. I had 2 parathas with a cup of chai. I had bhakra, not patasas, not banana patasas. And I had this incredible kera for you dish, banana on eggs. It sounds terrible, it doesn't look very good, but it tastes very good. I recommend. But anyway, so during the third Gatha day, spend the month, I'm experiencing growth. I'm praying more, I'm falling asleep less, I'm motivated by the thought of food, and I'm being helped by these different aspects to reach this growth. And similarly, the Spendama Gatha explains that our soul is experiencing growth and development. And our soul is being helped by the Sedana Trust funds, which hopefully Keki will touch on later. And so then we go to the fourth Gatha, Mokshadra. And by the time the fourth day of the Gathas comes around, I'm getting pretty good at praying the Gathas. And of course it helps that this Gatha is like 1/10 of the size of the first Gatha. But I'm also getting kind of sad. The Mukta prayer times are coming to an end, and we're really like a family. Let me tell you a secret. I'm not a very super duper social morning person, and so the people that I hang out with at 6 a.m. every day for 2 weeks really become family. Fred Uncle making parathas, Avananti bringing fresh roses, Kamalanti, my mom making the kumchas, Beshuddha making jokes and making fun of everyone. My dad and Cyrus coming in for chai. Daddy's my brother sleeping in the youth room while everyone sets up. It's like a family gathering. But except I'm not saying anything because it's 6 a.m. and I'm working. But anyway, so the fourth day of the Gathas, Mokshadra, is like our collective advancement through the Mukta and Gatha days. We have a routine, we're mostly used to it, and we're receiving this energy and authority within ourselves to prep, participate, and complete the rituals in a similar manner. And so this fourth Gatha is representing a spiritually advancing person, receiving divine power and authority. And then comes the last day of the Gathas, Vaishwesh, and we reach this culmination of all the Gathas. It's the last day, the shortest Gatha. I've successfully finished praying the Gatha, the Niyashis, all my usual prayers, and I still have time left over. All the Dasturjis finished their usual Mukta prayers. And the food is absolutely incredible. Everyone knows this is the last day. We have received all of the knowledge from Farzin, our wonderful person in charge, and with stories and stories about everything. We have sung every song in the book, including a song about Mahtab, ironically, and the Pakistan national anthem, and the Indian national anthem, and wait for it, the US national anthem too. And in a similar way, our soul too has reached a culmination, and we've succeeded with gaining knowledge and such. And so for me, the Gathas are not only guiding principles, but also these memories and the coming together of a family that meets for about 2 weeks every year, bringing with it new yet familiar memories that I recall every year. And so with that, Afshan, I know you have a few life experiences as well. I'm going to pass it over to you.
I can't say I've ever tried to pick up review, but I am intrigued. It's interesting. Anyways, I wanted to take you all through a bit of how, what a Gathas means to be. As Natasha mentioned, I feel that everyone sort of made with the Gathas in their own manner and in their own way. And while I did grow up in the Zarathushtra Association of North Texas, shout out to Zans, I really found and related to Gathas as I was going through my journey in public education and the high school system and the Boy Scouts. And my first really true experience of realizing the importance of the Gathas was actually through this badge in Boy Scouts called the Good Life Badge. And this is a badge started by an organization that started in 1925, 2,000 years after Zarathushtra was around. But they were actually talking about and socializing the words of the Gathas and how important they are and how relevant they are. And that really blew my mind. Like, I was in these interactions with my Boy Scout troop. How did so many other people want to learn about our religion? And what was the meaning of Gathas to them, given that they didn't actually grow up with it? So this really is what initially sparked my interest. And then I had the opportunity to go to a congress in London and learn a little more about Gathas. And so this was a really important time in my life where I was also going to college and studying biomedical. I was starting to question my religion as many people in college do. Like, I'm learning about evolution, I'm learning about physics, how am I supposed to make sense of everything, and also my religion, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years. But then this is really when I started to dive into the Gathas and what the words meant. I found that even with my scientific understanding and beliefs that I held to be true, there was nothing in the Gathas that really wrote those beliefs. So I found myself finding more and more peace with this religion that I've grown up in, have been taught since I was a kid, but now was starting to mean something to me personally. And I could relate to it and exchange ideas with friends who never heard about religion and have them relate to it as well. Next, I want to talk about my journey growing up in the workforce. How can the Gathas actually apply to your daily life, you might ask? So as Avari mentioned, I'm a product manager at Irani, and what that means is I have a lot of meetings. And these meetings can be about planning for something, or it can be something that's gone horribly wrong, like we have a bug in our code and nothing is important. So when I'm going to these meetings and getting pulled from meeting to meeting, I actually like to think about the Gathas and keeping my good mind. I had a chance to present to my colleagues and explain to them how I can actually use what I do to keep a level mind, not let what has affected me from a previous bug that I might have actually impact the people that I'm speaking to in my next meeting. Because I want to sort of live this virtuous life and try and live it in a way that makes sense in my daily life. And that's what I've been trying to find in Gathas as I live through them. Like, how can I relate to it? How in this modern day age can this actually impact my life better? And as I've been diving more and more into this topic, there is one aspect that I started to question a little bit myself, and this is this concept of perfection or mindset, which is one of our issues. As I've grown, I'm sure all of you, David parents know, there is this constant strive for perfection. You have to be good in school, you want to get into good colleges, and this sort of does tend to impact your life, especially when you get to post-grad. Now you're working, what else is there left to do, left to achieve? How can you conceive this concept of perfection? And this is something I actually want to propose to the technical. You have this concept of perfection, but how can we make sense with it as we grow older and still have this concept of safe mental health and loving ourselves in this manner, even if we're not perfect and achieving perfection every time. And with that, I will hand it over to Farzin to share some of her experiences as well.
My connection to the Gathas comes from how I was raised. Growing up, my parents stressed in equal measure the importance of our faith and education. It is when I started to educate myself about about our faith that I began to realize the kind of person that I wanted to be and the kind of leader I wanted to be. As Natasha said, the Gathas are like a how-to manual for living a good life. My favorite passage from the Gathas is Yesna 30.2. It states, listen with your ears, consider with an enlightened mind before reaching a decision on your own. This passage is something I often refer to as I grapple with new challenges in my life. It asks us to be critical thinkers throughout our lives. It applies to the small decisions like how to create a balanced plate for yourself as you strive for a healthy lifestyle. But it also applies to the big decisions, like picking your career. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, as I'm sure many of you can feel. My parents encouraged me to take up science classes, and I liked them. I even started my undergraduate career pre-med, but I always envisioned myself as a teacher. And in the end, I realized teaching was my passion, and with my Bahumana, I could bring joy and happiness into the world. It is through my work as an educator and activist that I follow Zarathustra's footsteps. In Yesna 30.2, Zarathustra states, I come to you as your teacher, sent by Mahtab to teach you to live in harmony with Asha, the truth. As a science teacher, I teach my students about the truth on how atoms work together to build matter in our environment. As the former Zaina co-chair, I asked my Zaina members to think critically about how we could bring joy and happiness to our community of young leaders in North America, as Yesna 29.10 asked us to. As an educator and a leader, I ask those around me to think critically and compassionately about how we can build a better future. In the explanation of Yesna 30.2, Jimmy Sudla states it is thus the duty of every Zarathustra to not only lead a good life for himself, but also to help guide others along the path of Asha or righteousness. And this is the person I strive to be and the kind of leader I strive to be. And this is how the Gathas directly impact the decisions that I make throughout my life.
Good afternoon. A religion is not of much value unless it can be practiced in daily living. These words of Mahatma Gandhi came to me when I was asked to say something about Zarathustra's Gathas on this occasion. My friends on the panel have described what the Gathas mean to them personally. I would like to do the same. First, I would like to summarize my understanding of the Gathas and the essential foundational teachings of Zarathustra. And then I would like to share with you my thoughts on how those teachings might be translated to daily life. My friends on the panel have described what basically the Gathas are. So I would like to start by asking the question, are they really relevant now to our life and our times? The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus says, something becomes relevant when the soul cries out. The soul cries out when we feel that something is not quite right with our life. Something seems to be missing. We have achieved everything we have sought. We have got success, money, power, prestige, possessions. Yet a nagging feeling remains that whatever happiness these things bring does not seem to last. So we start looking for the key to enduring happiness somewhere else. This search led me to the Gathas of Zarathushtra and to Bhagavad Gita, two texts that appeal to me deeply. Today we will talk about the Gathas. Zarathushtra tells us in the Gathas that there are some eternal spiritual laws that govern the universe. If we live in harmony with them, we will be happy. If we go against them, whatever happiness we find will prove to be temporary. He calls these laws the law of Afshan and the law of consequences. The word Asha is a cognate of the Rigvedic Sanskrit word Rita. Both these words mean that the world in which we live is not driven by some random forces. There is order in the universe. We can see that order is maintained in the material world by the laws of science, such as laws of motion. With penetrating insight, Zarathushtra tells us that order is also maintained in the spiritual domain by the law of Asha. Asha is essentially the principle of unity of life. All of us humans, animals, and nature are different forms of the same ground of life. We are all inscrutably connected. The essential characteristics of Asha are brought out in verse 3 of R29. Ahmai Asha Noit Sareja Advaya Shogavoi Vaitimravat. Noit Sareja. Asha does not divide, does not segment life into men versus women, blacks versus whites, Americans versus non-Americans, humans versus animals and nature. Asha sees life as one indivisible whole. And Advaresha, the word Dvesha means ill will or hatred. Asha does not bear ill will towards anybody, does not hate anyone. So, if all of life is united and connected, then harming any part of it is going to harm the whole and every part of it. If rainforests are destroyed in Brazil, the effect of that assault on the environment is going to be felt here in America and in cities and villages of India. Now let's consider the second eternal law, the law of consequences. To talk about this law, we should consider Zarathustra's views on the freedom of choice. When Allah must have conceived of his creation, he had two basic choices. Either he would make all the choices for all of his creation himself, so that everything would be predetermined, or he would give humans the freedom to choose. He picked the latter. Having given humans the freedom of choice, the wise Lord recognized that some of us would make wrong choices. Some of us would choose what will harm Mahtab's creation. So he needed some mechanism to make sure we don't continue to make wrong choices, harmful choices, over and over with impunity. That mechanism is the law of consequences. It simply says, all your choices have consequences. If our choices are harmful to life in any form, their consequences will be painful to us. As you sow, so shall you reap. How do we know what are the right choices? Mahtab has given us a criterion by which we can determine, we can evaluate our choices. Choices that promote Asha, promote the well-being of Mahtab's creation, are the right choices. Choices that frustrate Asha, that harm life, are the wrong choices. Having given us this criterion, Mahtab has avoided having to give us a list of commandments. Do this, don't do that. We can figure it out ourselves. Mahtab has given us a faculty called Vohumana, good mind or good thinking, which will tell us in any given situation what is right and what is wrong. It is important to understand that Vohumana is not ordinary reasoning faculty. It is not ordinary intellect. It is a kind of inborn wisdom, a natural moral intuition which will tell us what is right and what is wrong in all situations. Long time ago, a young boy asked his father, well, if all of us possess this Vohumana, then why is it that so many people can't tell you what is right and what is wrong? And his father answered, that is so, my son, because their natural moral intuition is clouded by tendencies such as fear, hatred, anger, jealousy, greed, and lust. If we free ourselves from such negative tendencies, our Vohumana will show us the right way always. Now, my friends on the panel have asked me to say something about what Zoroastrian way of life might look like in daily living. I would like to do this first by suggesting a few changes we could all make that will gradually transform our personality and bring us closer to the perfection of Mahtab. Then I would like to choose one problem all of us face and describe how I thought about it, guided by the teachings of Zarathushtra, and what changes I made personally in my own life. The inspiration for remaking ourselves comes from the often repeated triad, Mahtab, Bhukta, Varsha. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Thoughts are extremely difficult to control. St. Augustine said, I can tell my hand what to do, and it will do it. Why can't I tell my mind what to think? So let's start with something over which we have control. Let's start by refining our speech. The guiding principle remains Asha. So we resolve never to say anything that will hurt others. As we practice this, we become increasingly aware of the subtle ways in which our words and silences can hurt others. For example, when we gossip about something, we are hurting them. When we make a joke at someone's expense, we are hurting them. When we ignore someone, we are hurting them. When we talk down to someone, we are hurting them. When we interrupt someone, we are hurting them. When we hold grudge against someone and cannot forgive them, we are hurting them. Being kind and compassionate, that is the sum and substance of living in harmony with us. And compassion brings peace, love, and joy. All our relationships blossom. Now let's get to a significant problem. Steadily deteriorating environment is the greatest threat to all life on earth. This is how the Gathas began. The soul of Mother Earth goes to Avastat and says, human beings are mistreating me, tormenting me, and there is no one to help me. Please do something. If we were sensitive, we would recognize that that moment has returned to us now. And Mahtab is thinking, as we sit here, what am I going to do with these irresponsible humans? He expects us to solve this problem. The principle of Almighty told me that sitting on the sidelines was not an option. I had to do something. Of course, many of us do the obvious things. We recycle waste. We try to minimize the use of plastics. That is very good. But it's not going to solve the problem. So I kept thinking about searching for what I could do personally that was significant and within my control. As I looked at the factors affecting the environment, I realized that the destruction of the rainforests was one of the most significant ones. Rainforests are the lungs of the environment. They maintain balance in the ecosystem across the globe. And they are being destroyed at an alarming pace. They are being converted into grazing ground for animals who will provide us with meat for people to eat. As long as there is demand for meat, rainforests will continue to be destroyed. It has been estimated that if a significant proportion of population adopted vegetarian diet, there will be a significant healing of the environment. And doing so would also spare unspeakable suffering on part of animals who are also creations of Mahtab. So, Some 20 years ago, I decided to become vegetarian. Will this solitary contribution solve this problem? Will it make any difference? The Bhagavad Gita gave me answer to that question. Karmani vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma kadavaphala hetu ma te samloska akarmani. It is your duty to do the right thing. The results are not in your hands. Do not refrain from doing your duty just because you don't get to control the results. In other words, do the right thing and leave the results to the Lord. In spiritual living, intentions matter. Effort matters. Results are incidental because we don't control them. Offer up the results of your well-intended efforts to Mahtab. So as a gift, it will be more to him than a piece of sandalwood. When Zarathushtra received revelation from Mahtab, he shared it with mankind. He spoke about it and he practiced it in his own life. His modest little replicas of Zarathushtra for our times, we should do the same. First, we should change our own habits, and then we should try to persuade others to follow us. It took Zarathushtra many years to find a handful of disciples. So why should we get frustrated if people don't follow us for a long time? When at the end of life we stand on the Chimvat Garetu, the judgment bridge, the Lord is not going to ask us if we succeeded. He's going to ask us if we tried with all we got. I also realize that if we are to solve this problem, all of us will have to simplify our lives. This is not a plea for aesthetic living. This is a plea for common sense and responsible living. If all of us bought and consumed only what we truly needed, the burden on Mother Earth will reduce. Henry David Thoreau said, "What good is a beautiful house if there is not a decent planet to put it on?" Are you worried about that question? As followers of Zarathustra, we should never take the convenient position that nothing can be done about the environment. Many of you are young now. A whole life is ahead of you. If we don't solve this problem, nothing else will matter. I have shared with you my understanding of the foundational teachings of Zarathustra and my efforts to translate them to my own life. To me, religion is a very personal matter. This is how Zarathustra speaks to me. He may speak differently to you. That's all right. The examples I have given are meant to be illustrative. They may or may not resonate with you. That's all right. But I urge you to listen to your own Bhagavana and search that for the inspiration to do something to leave this world a better place. Do something every day that benefits someone other than yourself. A mystic person said, seek what you seek, but it is not where you seek it. In our seeking of personal happiness and fulfillment, we forget that we are not some isolated creatures. We are connected to all life. Zarathushtra gives us insight into the eternal laws that connect all of us and shows us the way that will take us to what we seek. I open down your shade, this there is on, up and down. The only path that takes us to what we seek is the path of Afshan. All other paths are blind valleys. There are no paths that close.
Thank you, Keki, Uncle, for providing us with that good stuff and insight into the Gathas. For the remaining, I think, 30 minutes that we have here, we are going to be taking some questions from the audience. I do ask just a few things. One is please keep your questions to 30 seconds long and make sure that they are questions and not comments. I will be mean if I have to and ask people to step away from the mics. Second is please try and keep your questions on topic about the Gathas itself. You do have the freedom of choice to not answer any of the questions that are asked. So, thank you. And we have two mics up here, and for thinking about it, we're monitoring the questions to the other mics. So, if you have another question, please line down.
Hello. I need to close with is first we're going to start with the setting that we do have monthly Gathas study courses in Houston at the end of the day. And I want to introduce Maria Rubina, so we conduct these classes. And we respect everybody's opinion. And he has written a book on the Gathas, on the surgeon, went into other books on the Gathas. And we would love to have participation from the young people, Asha, her friend, and everybody else. That's my comment.
First of all, excellent job. Pam did a great job. Natasha, you were exceptional. The points you made were really very good. As you said, we have a monthly Gathas study group. It's our second Sunday of every month at the Zoran Social Houston at the Atmosphere. We invite you all, the Houston folks, and even out of grounders. We have Zoom set up where you can join us via Zoom and participate in the discussion, the interactions, and that will be very beneficial to all of us. So I urge you to do that, and please come join us. Thank you. Thank you. And please move forward, try and keep your questions to questions, no comments, please.
I just have a quick question. Where could I get a translation of the Gathas? Because I don't understand in the Farsi. I want to know what the meaning of the Gathas is.
Sure. There was a book that was given to you in administration that has the Gathas and the explanation.
Thank you.
So Irani has published
the translation of the Gathas by many years ago. It's available online and you can purchase it at the University of Gathas. There are also seven other Gatha translations available online. So I was going to put up one version by Chinese, within one Chinese in Canada has a tremendous trove with all kinds of information of the Gathas, which I will know. And there are many, about 1,500 other versions available on the English. So come and join us in the study of Gathas.
Good afternoon, my name is Law. One of the questions I think many of you will face is there are so many translations of Gathas. Which one should I use? We get that question all the time. So there are many answers possible from that question. Of course, the translation one prefers depends upon where one is on his or her journey to the Gathas. It also has personal preferences, such as how literal you want the translation to be. All that said, I would like to suggest that we consider Dr. Gathas' translation as a reference translation. It may or may not be the best translation, but it is a word-for-word translation with extensive commentaries and explanation of his choice of words for the appropriate Avestan words. So the strengths of some of the other translations can be demonstrated by comparison with Dr. Gathas' translation. And the final comment I would say is the best translation of the Gathas is not a book. It is a person. A person who has completely absorbed the teachings of Zarathushtra given in the Gathas projects a personality that will be felt by anyone who comes near that person. We may have seen some of these persons in our grandparents or uncles, from friends. So I think that knowing such a person is one way to absorb the essential teachings of the Gathas. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Nasser Khan. I have a question for you guys, especially for the younger generation and the man. Can you share your experience or life experiences that has made you believers in the teachings of the Gathas to why you're here today? And how can we encourage the next generation to emulate the same?
So good afternoon. My name is Karim Ikiwala.
How are you kids?
I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah, all of us have yes, so I do want to just opportunity, been through. Okay, all right. Thank you for the hard question. So for me personally, I think it was not so much like it wasn't as much like how the Gathas So I have many other friends who grew up religious in many other faiths. And I saw many of them as they go to college, they start to question their religions and start to question why they're taught certain things certain ways, as I'm sure all of us did at certain points in our lives. For me, the reason I found so much virtue and the Gathas resonated with me is because when I started to ask these questions I was always able to go back to this one fundamental teaching which I ended up learning was the foundational teaching of Zarathushtra, and was able to make sense of that, and it didn't necessarily break any of my perspective of how I thought about the world. And to me, that was something really special, that like, these words are 2,000, 3,000 years old. There are variations of these words that have been described other religions, but the essential meaning of these words is something core to how humanity should be living, in my perspective, and that was something I was really able to relate to, and didn't break my perspective on how I should live and contribute to what. So I think it was really not what was in the Gathas, but it was what, or it was what was in the Gathas, but the fact that what was in the Gathas didn't necessarily break my perspective on the science and technology and all the other perspectives on that I've been learning as I go into this modern day age. And I will let anybody else get involved into the
For me, what I aspire to is to make sure that everybody around me is taken care of and is looked after, and our Gathas don't tell us what to do, but give us the support and ask us to think about how you want to treat other people or how a situation makes you feel. So if you were uncomfortable by something that is a reminder for me to be more inclusive when I am interacting with other people. So, I think every opportunity is a
I think for me, it was more the way we were taught. For us, it was not, at least here recently in Ghana, I feel like it was more not taught so that you need to know, it was taught so that you understand and interpret it the way that you think is right. And that's where the whole idea of the freedom of choice and things here that comes into play. For yes, it is a part of our life, but it is not a strict anymore. It is up to us and for us to choose, and it is an example of these are some things that you should keep in mind no matter what you're doing and where you want it. Yeah.
So to answer the question about why there's a beer, on the thing, well, I'm on a Thursday evening was like, yo, I'm joking. But I think, like, rather than the Gathas specifically, for me at least, like Natasha said, we grew up in Houston and we were taught not what maybe the translation of the Gathas were, but how to enact them in our lives and what it means in our daily lives. But also, like, the idea that I do believe in God and open our listener, and the fact that Zarathushtra was, someone who spoke, and the idea that the Gathas are one of the texts that he wrote, and so they serve as guiding principles. So it's the idea that, we believe in Ahura, we believe that Zarathushtra wrote the Gathas, and so we believe the things that the Gathas say as guiding principles.
So my question to the president is going to be that we have a Christian environment all of us in the and he has talked to us at that time about how a human soul goes through a cleansing process on the vast cases of the Gathas, and if you could share the same with us, it would be wonderful for everybody. Thank you.
I'm going to repeat the question, but if I missed anything or misinterpreted it, please just let me know. So here the question is about what happens to our soul on the first few days of the Gathas
So the general question is about what the Gathas say about the afterlife. Many other traditions, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, have detailed conceptions of what happens if the soul is after a person passes away. The focus of Zarathushtra's Gathas is largely on how we live while we are on earth. So it gives a rather sketchy description of what avatar there is this concept of genuine gratitude, which is a kind of bridge that a soul tries to cross when a person appreciates body. And a person who has consistently chosen truth and the path of righteousness crosses the bridge and walks into the land of good consciousness. The person who has not done that fails to cross the bridge and falls into the abyss. What happens to that person is not clearly outlined in the Gathas. But there is one verse, within it is verse 11 of R47. This verse is divided people. Many of the readers believe that that verse is some justification of the concept of reincarnation. There are Dr. Dr. and Ron Janis Vina Mahinda strongly believe that this verse supports the teachers supporting the idea of reincarnation. But many scholars disagree that because in their opinion, reincarnation takes away the urgency of getting everything right in this very life. So perhaps we all believe, in that verse what we already believe. In terms of what happens day by day right after a person dies, the Gathas will say anything about that. And so I would not be the right person to give a strong opinion on that. Still, another.
I was wondering if we do like the opportunity she widely insists that Pakistan where Iranian need to understand it, Farsi or Indian need to understand it. It's in the language that we have no comprehension of. And we train our youth with Avesta, and that's why they get away from it. They find it boring and comprehended it is not much of their life. And then you come across Gathas, which are messages that everybody could identify with in their lives, and yet we don't teach that to our children or require them to do it in Zarathushtra. Why is that?
I can take a stab at this and then maybe turn it over to someone else. From my understanding, a lot of the ceremonial and culture related with our religion is different from Iranians and Parsi people, and maybe we go out our own culture 70 years ago in paradise. What we were focused on today is what is in the Gathas and what is Zarathushtra has spoken and taught us as part of his teachings. A lot of the other ritualistic aspects of religion, I would encourage you to examine from your story, and I think, many different perspectives on the different ritual methods. So I would like to get a little bit of any comment on what the Gathas might do and skip right.
I think as I heard, the question was a two-part question. One has to do with what is in the Gathas versus what is in some later texts. And the other part of the question was the question of language. the language of Gathas is Avestan. Very few people today know that language. And so people simply memorize the words. And is that meaningful? So that is one of the other questions. So let me try to invite academies on mind, because as a teacher is a very personal thing to me. So this is how Zarathushtra speaks to me. I think that Gathas are generally believed to be the only text directly attributable to Zarathushtra, and therefore the first source to go to learn about the teachers. Should we be using later texts? If the later texts are assistant in the Gathas and shed new light on the nuances of something that Zarathustra teaches, then we can learn from it and we can expand our understanding. Actually, my view is that even some other texts, such as in my case, Bhagavad Gita, if they share some nuances of the law of consequences, I will embrace that and try to expand my understanding of what Zarathushtra might have meant. If the later texts go against the teachings of the Gathas, then a sincere follower of Zarathustra's teachings would appreciate that. Going to the question of language, I personally believe that everyone should understand what they are saying when they pray from a text. So I certainly think there should be some critical translation, discuss it with a group of people. But I think there is some value in reciting those prayers in the original language at the same time, not in place of, but in addition to it. Because there is something about the sound of the original language that has certain effect. And after a while, you see, if you have understood what Hashem Gohu means, when I recite Hashem Gohu in the original language, the meaning actually comes spontaneously to my mind. That is ideally how it should work with every prayer. And given that, my thinking is that it is better to embrace shorter prayers and completely absorb them than to read very long yashas and so on and so forth. So those would be my thoughts on your question, but it's a very good question and it's possible that they are quite simple. Thank you.
But when to add on the third day of the 31st year, we do not like to be grasping discounts that we might go over to just about the work to class and to benefits that we also recommend with a lot of more things to me. Which I recommend with that. And also I wanted to add, it's like, let's see, gave you a something about related to sounds. Like, I know about race things are very important. I mean, pray about races or our prayers are very important and actually being effective. It's why we prefer to pray aloud. It's why we sing to Gathas. So it's maybe another God.
A couple of quick questions on the place of the Gathas in Zoroastrian religious texts.
Good.
And even if you know why the Gathas are compiled just in the last 5 or 7 or 2 days of the year, if the Gathas are what have been received by us, as Keki said, in the very words of Zarathushtra, something that's not common with the other religions. Why do we place them at such a secondary level where we only confine them to a certain part of the year? Why is it that our common prayer book mostly just names the Gathas and does not carry them in their content? So, Zoroastrians following the words of Zarathustra, and the words of Zarathustra that we receive by us are placed on the secondary level.
Why is that?
GT.
I think it comes to us as individuals to really take on ownership of our own faith. So if that's something we can work eyes at us having it in front of you at your kitchen table and read a passage every day and have a discussion with your family. I think what we choose to do kind of shapes the way that we show up for each other and show up for our community.
I think more than a secondary skills, I feel like it's more than bonding when everybody comes during those days together. It's a time when we remember those who have passed away, and we take the Gathas along with their pages and sort of remember them and renew them to make sure we carry them forward for the rest of the year. And while we do it, the rest of the year is us personally going over the Gathas, whereas those days, coming however many days are, depending on where you are a way of sort of collectively renewing those values.
I also think it's important to distinguish that the Gathas themselves are not the same as the Gatha days. So you can pray the Gathas whenever you want. We just tend to pray them on the Gatha days. And then also the prayers that actually happen during the Gatha days for the departed souls are not the Gathas themselves. So there are different offerings that bring back to different prayers.
Gathas need to be emphasized unquestionably in teaching of Zarathustra's religion to our children and grown-ups alike. Until recently, it was somewhat secondary nature. So I think that is something that we can undertake. And as I think was correctly pointed out, we don't have to read the entire Ahunavaidi Gatha at one sitting. That is kind of sounds prohibitive. But we can take a verse or two. I think there are groups of people who discuss these gathas. Somebody talked about the importance of rituals in community building. Similarly, a small number of people, this is my dream of how this would work. A small number of people meet, some young people, some older people. They read a verse or two from the Gathas, they read a couple of translations, and they discuss. And they end always that session by saying, what are some of the living problems upon us now? Either broadly or in life of a particular person in that group, that person can bring up. And then we try to see if wisdom of Zarathushtra can be applied to that situation. I think one of the reasons young people are getting somewhat distance from texts such as Gathas is because they find it too academic, not very relevant, and does not address anything that is actually happening in the world around us. I think that is something we can all collectively correct in the way in which we talk about and teach Gathas, and also give a forum for close community building where we can follow up this discussion with a delightful meal or music or whatever. Those would be my thoughts.
Hey everyone, so I agree that Gathas is the parts of our religion, and that identity we follow as Zoroastrians is so important and very key for studies of what's to come. So in question, and to each of the young people on the panel, there's a lot of parents in the crowd, there's a lot of grandparents, there's 2 parents here, I'm one of them. And I would really like to honestly ask each of you for something that your parents or someone like to look up to that's helped you get closer to the faith and your identity of Zoroastrianism, and something that's pushed you further away. So
parents have all these different tactics to try and help us, have this resurgence in its identity. And some of it works and some of it doesn't work. And I think it's really helpful, especially to hear from young people, because you guys seem to identify with Zoroastrianism pretty well. You guys are aware of the Gathas and how to live the best life you can. So, just pushing you to come for Congress, is making you go to a religious school, anything you can think of that's one thing that's pushed you away, but one that's brought you closer to this identity. I would love to know.
I'm Dastur, and thanks to give a shout out to my parents. Are my parents here? Anywhere? Hello? Oh, hi, how are you today? I think my parents have been instrumental making sure that my faith is close to me. We talk about it over the dinner table. They remind me to do my prayers, and they make it a routine. I also think the going back themselves, we're very lucky in Houston. We have a community. We're able to attend Afshan. My dad and my brother are priests, so whenever they get invited to do prayers, I go with them. My mom goes with them, and I think that exposure of actually being in front of a ceremony that's happening over and over, and then coming home and praying is kind of and listening over a dinner table about how we can relate to the prayers or what they mean has really helped me come closer to it. One thing that has sort of just I think is not having all the answers, and sometimes it's difficult to come to terms with the fact that all of these texts that we may pray and that we see performed may not have the answers to the question that we have. And it's sort of grappling with the idea of, is it blind faith, which I think it is, right? That's the term that I've come to, or is it this doesn't prove this, and then how do you move forward with that? If there's no answer, then what do you do? So I think that's sort of discipline.
I agree with that. For my parents, I played a really big role. My parents, my grandparents, and close family members. And I think another group of people who have actually helped me get a lot closer are our friend group, and they give to our generation above us. With having so many young priests, we're super lucky in Houston. And the ability to learn from people our age or close to our age, I feel like has really connected me with the Gathas religion, because it feels like it's something that is not just coming from somebody older, it is coming from somebody our age and is very relevant today. And one thing to that has distanced me again is probably the distance and how it takes a bit to get to some of the answers, and how we just sometimes have to do a little digging. I can relate to that.
So one thing that I found challenging about this was the literal distance to other side of the space around the parents. But once I decided, once I was invited and started showing up to different events that we've been hosting in North America and congresses, I really felt a sense of community that I was always longing for. And I want to shout out to my friends that signed up for building that community with me and making sure that we have a place for young adults to come to. It's something that I was longing. One thing that my parents really encouraged was asking me what I wanted, and never saying no, but maybe sometimes challenging what I wanted and giving me the space to think through my options and being open to having conversations. And really just allowing me to make my own decisions.
So, I'm going to answer the question as honestly as possible, and this is my perspective, and my perspective growing up. I am very supportive and encouraging parents. I was very welcome in the community. But I think what really started this speaking in the community was honestly like prayer, and I mean prayer as an ask of God. And that to me seemed like I want to share like art that I kind of my pocket, that okay, like all these other people in my class are these things in, don't have the chance to say the shit without wearing black with these things in it. And I do. So like that didn't make sense to me, you know, that what are these words I'm actually saying? Why should I say this is fucking saying like what power is this actually doing? And it was really like that, those questions where I started learning about the Gathas, learning about Ukraine and what are those things. And I realized that like while they are sort of an ask for help, it's more an ask for guidance and ask for like giving the volume on us being good and right decisions. And that was the way that I was able to get that close to our religion and reconnect with God and make more sense of what I was saying. But then the other quality that I want to make, which I think is really important aspect of any religion, is the service model. To me, when I went to these, and I believe to give back, whether it's part of our community or other people in the Dallas community who are less fortunate to us, that was something that I was really able to connect with and thought was powerful, and that was my connection. Like, everybody really made me so proud. It made me proud to be so right.
Hi, good afternoon, I'm Kari Street. I have a question similar to what Kevin raised. I'm a religious person, and I pray. I do all the yashkas and yanis and all of that. But Gathas have not been part of my prayers because I've always been told that this the only 5 days you can pray Gatha. So why is that so? Why not I pray Gathas on a normal or majority or something like that? And then my second question to that is, you mentioned that 2 preachers which have influenced you, one was Bhagavad Gita and Gathas. Did you find a lot of similarities between the 2 scriptures? So, if you could please answer both of my questions.
Thank you for that question. I think we can make a change in how we embrace Gathas anytime we want. I've been one that decided that I don't have to leave Gathas on Fridays or a year. It didn't make any sense to me. So I take parts of the Gathas and I use them as prayers anytime. And I think I would encourage you to do that. I think, some of the prayers, such as the prayers used in Navjot, Agasti prayers, they are part of a daily ritual, so they get recited every day. Now it would be helpful if parents can relate what is contained in Jaspriya Mahtab, the flower garden, the last part of the Agasti prayers, and show to children how they are actually a well-considered reflection of the Gathas, and thereby take them to Gathas themselves. So we need to encourage people to read Gathas in small parties, and I think we can change the orientation of our community. And what was the second part of the question? Just say. Oh yes, right. I think that is. I have written an article in Farzin journal on that subject. There is a very close connection between the teachings expressed in the Bhagavad Gita and the Gathas. Actually, if you think about the similarities, there are 17 songs in the Gathas. There are 18 chapters in the Gita. The language of the Gita is Sanskrit, language of the Gathas is Avestan. They are very similar. They share vocabulary, they share grammar, and they share common terms. More importantly, central concepts such as Asha and the law of consequences find analogs in the Bhagavad Gita. The verse that I recited today is a very good example In Gathas, we say that all our choices will have consequences. The Bhagavad Gita adds a nuance to that and says, it is the intention with which you do something that matters. So if your intention to do something was good, but the outcome turned out to be not so good, then it does not produce negative consequences. And conversely, if you do something good, but your intention behind that was not so noble, then that will have a consequence. So that was a shade, nuance that I gathered from the Bhagavad Gita, and there are many things like that. So I would, for people who are interested in these subjects, both texts are worthwhile reading, and you will see similarities quite big in them.
One question, and it goes on tradition versus interpretation. So, per Tibetan observance in our lifetime, we probably in those directions, we know some translation about this. Because for many years, we memorized the others tradition that if not the existing gods. Now we also make that which will know some interpretation of it themselves. And then also, many of the Russian teach meanings that might be not connected all the time. Ali, Zoroastrians, Irani, Afghan, how should we balance both the modern techniques that we have versus these traditions? There's not all we can be alignment, and what should we use as a central source of truth if Gathas is a little bit more?
Briefly to establish this, I think largely the point being bringing up tradition versus like the meaning and symbolic nature of that. So as our diaspora is becoming more connected, we are interacting with interacting all over the world. I really think of Gathas as this sort of almost resonance film that we can use to understand each other from all of the work, right? Because while we may have our own traditions and culture and rituals in these various different places, they all theoretically stem from these Zarathushtra's words, which from the readings that I've done, it is a very it's a chance that's really up for interpretation and allows you to change from what you want else to get. And I think that power and having us ability to interpret that and understand in a way that makes sense to you allows us to live harmony without thinking about our differences, because we are coming together and using the differences. Whereas in the stone, you know, the can solve these several religions of the
To build on that, I think we can take a little more ownership on our understanding, and it's something that we can look to other communities to kind of maybe look to their example. For example, some of my 16-year-old students run Bible study at their church. Every Wednesday, they take ownership of their faith. And it's something that I really wish we did more of in our community.
Cool. I guess it's kind of a follow-up question. We're moving forward from this session, but I was curious for the youth on the panel specifically. Do you think that there's more to being Zoroastrian than the Gathas? Or personally, how do you find meaning in the practice of the rituals of our ancient faith in the modern day?
It's getting the judgment
Yeah, say you go to a judgment, right? I'm performing the judgment. There's meaning to the actions that I'm doing, but as a member of the audience and a member of the youth, how are you applying either what you know in the Gathas or what you learn in the faith to give meaning to a ritual that's as old as our religion?
Okay, so I think that sitting down, so for me personally, like I was saying, sitting down when like, for example, when you're doing assessment and you're on one of the last prayers to ask the Lord that you've done specific things, like what does that mean? What are you praising in that moment? And what is the point of the prayer that's being done? And then for me also just praying for myself, I think it's allowed me to connect into this time where I pray and anxiety let us on my brain and my heart sit.
Yes, sir. I guess, would you say that rituals go in line with defining themselves as rational, or do you think the Gathas are like core values and then rituals are that?
I think what is service and what is celebration that should have is very beyond what it tells.
And stuff up.
I sort of go back to harping on the last question as we think about this diaspora. There are differences in rituals. Like I've been to the Irani Zarathushtra ceremony, I've been to the Parsi ceremony, and they are slightly different ceremonies, even though they stand under the same symbolism, the same religion. To me, like how I guess struggled with this question is there is a lot of importance to rituals and traditions. Like there's thousands of years of history, then there is some meaning to it. I like to understand you to be sensitive. And once I've done that, then I like to interpret how I want to live the religion based on the Gathas. Like the Gathas to me are at sort of like how your service are to, but then I obviously align with the Gathas, respect others, and keep it open in my mind. So I want to listen to those and understand what it means, is what it is. But there may be aspects of that symbolism that I don't really tie with. But that doesn't mean that I don't respect it and I understand what's better than God in there. And I think that is part of being a good fresh and all of that as well.
It's really interesting time to be living in North America because while we have the time and the freedom and to really dig into the rituals that have been passed down to us, because I was literally just over 30 years old, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to think about how we want to take these rituals, which ones are important to us, and what rituals do we want to create as we really get configured with that.
I would like to respond to this by telling a short little story. I'm from Zarathushtra community, and I had the good fortune of knowing Professor Irani, who came from that community. And he told us a story. The day before his nuptial, is a ceremony, his tradition. The day before his nuptial, his father called him and said, "Kendo, do you know what's going to happen tomorrow?" And he said, "Yeah, it's my nuptial." And so he was asked, what is that going to do? And he said, "Oh, we will have friends, we will have family, we will have nice foods." And his father said, "Yes, we will have all those things. But do you know what it will mean for you?" And then he gave me a short understanding of the foundational teachings of Zarathushtra, that the Zoroastrian child commits to on the day of the Lord in language that was appropriate on the child. Professor Irani never took up this. He told us that I never forgot. That's how people saw the foundational teachings of Zarathustra and see ceremonies as beautiful expressions of those teachings. Then the why special meaning. We have an acknowledgement of that experience distributed his father's translation in commentary of the Gathas in people who are attending his congress. And I'm very grateful to Sagni to be available for this purpose. Thank you.
So as we get into the conclusion of this session, as we conclude this session, we just want to reflect on what we talked about. So our discussion provided a deep dive into the Gathas, uncovering their spiritual, cultural, and philosophical dimensions, and illustrating how they continue to shape our understanding of ethics, integrity, responsibility in the modern world. And from Keki and Paul's personal reflections to perspectives shared by our panelists, we learned how the teachings of Zarathushtra have influenced the development of our own personal moral frameworks, and how the principles are not just ideals to aspire to, but also actual guides for our everyday lives. Our exploration of religious perspectives has shown how deeply ingrained beliefs can shape our values and decisions, often uniting us in shared goals, but sometimes also challenging us to question our what assumption is. And so this is not just an academic exercise, but a real-world reflection of how we interact with each other and how we respond to the world voice present in the town, such as fiscal justice, environmental responsibility, and personal integrity. And so throughout our Q&A with the audience, we talked about different translations, what the Gathas mean to youth, how we implement it within our own lives. We talked about the timeliness of Gathas themselves, rituals, and many other things. And so as we look ahead, we want to remind you that the journey does not end here. It begins with each of us here. And so remember that power to make a difference lies within us. And God has called us to use our good mind to make decisions with wisdom, compassion, and clarity. And how you interpret the Gathas and apply them to your life will be different to each of ours. So we must encourage that dialogue that respects diverse perspectives and promotes empathy. And by doing so, we not only enhance our own growth, but we contribute to a more harmonious and world community. And together, we can turn today's discussions into tomorrow's action. Feel free to reach out to any of us after the session, and with that, thank you very much.
So let's have a big round of applause for this very inspiring, very reflective, and good questions from all of you. Thank you very much, and that's your small group of from Team Congress. That's it.